Hello guys, this is the Gaming Revolution here and welcome back to an all new Call of Duty Modern Warfare video. Today I want to be talking about something in particular that has sparked a lot of interest over on Twitter. So these are tweets coming from a guy called Dr. John Respectful. So I'm going to read through all of his tweets right now and then I'm going to talk about it because I think this is worth a discussion and I think it's definitely worth a viewpoint. But please be respectful in the comment section and stuff like that. Just to add some context, he is a former US Marine. So let's read all this for you guys right now. So it starts off by saying, so I want to talk about the Modern Warfare panel at E3 and some of what was said because it's a perfect example of every problem I have with video games that attempt to depict realism in combat. Content warning, I will be vivid, I will be graphic because I need to be. The following quote is in regards to accidentally shooting a baby being held by a woman civilian. If you comport yourself in a way not benefiting a soldier, the game will fail you. What does that even mean? Can you actually shoot that word baby? Will the game end? I cannot say that word obviously, otherwise the video will get demonetized. And I get where he's coming from, but at the same time, I'm sure in real life scenarios within the war, people have made mistakes like this, as tragic as that is. But anyways, I'm going to continue reading it. I'll give a summary of my thoughts at the end. Anyways, it goes on to say the game will try to figure out if you shot that baby on purpose or accidentally. And then what? Navy SEAL Edward Gallagher committed murder and war crimes in real life. Will your character be apprehended and put on trial? I doubt it. Why is this even an option? Once again, I get where he is coming from. Now, he did also provide a video where he talks about similar thoughts as he talked about within his tweet, but the point that he was trying to get across is saying that essentially the Infinity Ward developers are simply manipulating people and manipulating the suffering that veterans have endured for their own personal gain to help sell the game, and I disagree with this point entirely. I don't think the Infinity Ward developers are trying to do that whatsoever at all. Obviously, they have not been in the war themselves, and I'm sure they think that they've done their best to try and accurately portray war as best as they can. I am sure they have interviewed hundreds upon hundreds of veterans and the US military, and they've probably done a lot of research, and this is the conclusion they've came to, and this is what they've based their story off of. I am sure they are not knowingly trying to portray the campaign as being 100% accurate, because we all know a video game is never going to be able to portray that. It's just impossible. For them to say though this is going to be as accurate as we're possibly going to get, I think that is a fair assumption to make, because I do think this game is going to be just about as accurate as a video game can ever get. And as I was saying, there are going to be lots of things incorrect. There are going to be lots of things that, for example, he has not experienced himself that may be portrayed within this campaign, but it does happen to other people. As I was saying, everyone's experiences are different, so they're just trying to come up with their own story that is going to be moving and will try to educate people. Yes, some things will be inaccurate or some things may be exaggerated. As I was saying, with the millions and millions of people who have fought over the years, every single person's experience is going to be different, and they've just came up with a story that, as I was saying, they've probably done a ton of research and they've taken snippets from loads of different people's experiences and mashed together a story. I think it's just really unfair to accuse them of being manipulative and stuff like that. Yes, they want to sell the game, but at the end of the day, they just want to make a compelling story which will further help sell the game itself. The point that I'm trying to make is that Infinity Ward are simply trying to tell a story. They are not trying to take away from any of the experiences that actual veterans have and will continue to endure. They shouldn't be exempt from telling a realistic story as if it's somehow exclusive to the actual veterans. They are capable of telling their own story. They just want to create a moving story that stays in people's hearts after they have played it and is something that is memorable and brings out emotion and tears for some of the playtesters. It's not like they're telling a reenactment of someone else's story and someone else's experiences. It's a made-up story. It's never going to be 100% accurate. It's never going to be 100% a factual depiction of people's actual events. However, this is still the best we'll ever get out of a video game, personally. And I don't see anything wrong with Infinity Ward claiming it to be a realistic experience. Everyone knows that it's obviously never going to be anywhere near what it's actually like, because it's impossible. There's a million of different variables that go into war, and a million of different things that cause tragedy in different ways, mental and physical. There's no way just one form of media can portray all of that, and if they continue to evolve this new Modern Warfare into a trilogy again, they can explore even more ideas within each of the different games that they don't touch upon within this first game. It's going to be way more realistic than the original Modern Warfare trilogy, technology, now with the better technology, and it's not going to make war seem as fun as it used to within the past Call of Duties, which I think is a plus. But he goes on to say, but if you're really trying to do your job and you're just like, oh god damn it, I made a mistake and I feel really bad about it, we want you to feel that. We want you to really sit with that. And these are direct quotes that came from the panels over at E3. So he then goes on to say, Infinity Ward, let me tell you about what it feels like to sit with that. There isn't a day that goes by I don't think about Iraq, not one day. I have been sitting in that chair for 15 years now and I'll sit in it for the rest of my life. Oh crap, I made a mistake and I feel bad. Doesn't that word begin to describe what we feel like when we mess up in combat? Once again, I get where he is coming from, because what the Infinity Ward developers want to do is they want to allow the character to make mistakes. For example, the terrorists within the game are going to be dressed up like normal civilians, so you may accidentally shoot a civilian who goes to grab money out of her purse or something like that, and you may mistake it for her wanting to pull a gun out, and you may accidentally kill her. And yes, I completely understand that with Infinity Ward trying to make the game more realistic by having this tone and allowing you to make mistakes with the game not being failed straight away by you accidentally killing a civilian or whatever. I understand how that is never going to be anywhere near comparable to actually making that mistake in real life. However, the game is a game and it is never going to come anywhere near the true extent of stepping in war. The only way to truly get that impact is by being in war yourself. Until you have been in the boots of, for example, Dr. John Respectful, then you're never truly going to have that emotional impact. But at the same time, I think it is unfair to critique Infinity Ward for wanting to be as realistic as possible, because essentially what he's saying is, well, what is even the point of having these aspects in the game when it is nothing and will never be able to compare to the actual thing? I just think that's a bit of a broken approach to take, because of course it's never going to be able to truly have that same impact on you. Just like a movie that is trying to retell a historical story is never going to be the actual thing. It's impossible. You're never going to have that same impact as being there on the battlefield or being there in person or actually enduring any of these scenarios. And I don't think Infinity Ward are trying to take away from the people who have had to endure these things. This game is meant for entertainment at the end of the day. It's meant to tell a story, and the story that is being told within Modern Warfare is made up for starters. It's not a real story, it's not retelling anything, although they are trying to go for a realistic take. It's based on their own independent research. It's just a game at the end of the day, and I get where he's coming from, because he thinks that it may be harmful if Infinity Ward are trying to portray the game as being realistic, which can give people somewhat of a warped sense of reality if it's nowhere near like what it's actually like. But at the same time, it's as close as you're possibly going to get with a video game. A video game or any form of media is never going to be what it's actually like, because it is not real life. The game is a simulator. It's trying its best, but it's never going to achieve it to the full extent of what it wants to portray, because that's just impossible. But anyways, I'm going to continue reading what he has said. So he quotes Infinity Ward again, saying, part of the reality of war is that there are people who face unpleasant events, but what we don't want to shy away from is the realities that some people face in war. He goes on to say, oh boy, let's talk about the reality of war. We used to see suicide bombers strap explosives to the chest and mainline fistfuls of meth and adrenaline before they ran screaming at us, unable to feel the rounds impacting their bodies as Marines desperately tried to stop them. We used to have detainees look us in the eye and say, don't ever free us because we won't hurt you. We're going to find your families at home and we're going to torture them to death on video and post them on the internet. The reality of war is your unit abandoning the Iraqi/Afghan interpreters who risked their lives to help you, despite your pleas for otherwise, knowing what would happen to them when you left, knowing what would happen to their families. The reality of war is your sergeant with a wife and two very young kids getting reduced to ash after moving to protect his Marines. It's having a rushed memorial service as the mortars and rockets are raining down. The reality of war is having to watch an IR feed of a drone strike someone ordered hitting its targets, knowing that kids and civilians were probably caught in the blast, having to watch that as a new father to an infant son whose blanket you carry in your rucksack. The reality of war is hearing about a young man you knew and admired blowing his head off years later because his PTSD was too much for him, leaving behind young kids and a wife. It's ruined marriages, years of therapy, spontaneous crying, and solemn regret. It's swerving on the highway to avoid that box that might be an IED. It's the weird looks you get after driving on the pavement when a car backfires. It's your mother walking in on you sobbing uncontrollably into your hands. The reality of war is being forced to watch videos you find of unspeakable atrocities being inflicted upon screaming, pleading men begging for their lives, slow beheadings while someone is still alive, people being lit on fire. The sounds, they stay with you forever. The reality of war is a Marine you served with huddled under his kitchen table with a rifle because he absolutely has no idea where he is and thinks he's still in Ramadi, hunkered down in some crater. It's the men and women who didn't make it home. It's the sons and husbands and wives and daughters now bereft of their loved ones when they didn't need to be. It's the names I'll be looking for whenever we get around to building an OIF memorial. The reality of war is living every day. There's nothing poetic or glorious or badass about being in war. It's mostly scared teenagers and older NCOs/officers trying to pretend they aren't scared. The reality of war is 15 years of considering how close I came to death, the constant thought that I was 2 feet away from not being here to tell you all of this. My son almost never existed. I almost never met the love of my life. I was almost a memory, ash and blood on the wind. I almost never got the chance to talk with you, to laugh with you, to love with you, to drop my video game takes or laugh at myself with you. I almost never met my official CDGC family, which is his podcast group, I believe. I almost wasn't here to tell you how much you mean to me, and I think about it daily. The reality of war is a lifetime of disabilities, mental health issues, loss, regret, pain, tears, lost limbs, nightmares, broken homes, windows, widowers, orphan children, and memories that are chained to your psyche forever. That is the reality of war. It's not something that can be captured by a video game. You can't digitize that and slap it on a disc. You can't make someone understand that through a controller. You can't explain it through tutorials. So developers, the next time you claim to capture unpleasant events or depict the realities of war, consider your words and intent very carefully. This isn't a game for us, this is our reality. I pray you never live it. Now, he did go on to follow up with some other tweets, saying the only way for anyone to truly understand the true horrors of war is to enlist yourselves. And I just think that clearly he's quite upset, and he has the right to be. Obviously, he's been through a lot. And I do agree with some of the points that he is touching upon, and maybe the Infinity Ward developers could be better in their explanations for what they are trying to strike with this game. But I think everyone who is excited for Modern Warfare being more realistic than previously obviously knows that it is never going to truly be able to depict the true horrors of war. Obviously, no one ever is going to truly understand the mental, the emotional, the physical pain that he and many other people and veterans have endured and are going to continue to endure within the future. However, the game, I think, is trying to go for a more realistic tone than any previous game prior. And while it's never going to truly be able to be almost like a virtual reality simulator, for example, in the future, probably hundreds of years down the line, virtual reality will probably get so good so that people will be able to experience these awful things like they actually exist. And honestly, that's kind of scary to think about, because in the future, technology will probably get good enough to be able to do that, which means people could literally give themselves PTSD willingly. I don't even know how I got off on this diversion. I didn't even mean to touch upon this topic, but what I'm trying to say is that the Infinity Ward developers are not trying to create an exact representation of war, because that's impossible through media. No one is going to be able to truly understand unless you are there in person. However, I think he's misjudging Infinity Ward's true intention here. They're trying to create a more realistic version or outtake of war. They're not trying to create a 100% representative version of war, because that's impossible to portray through a TV screen. Just because they're trying to go for a more realistic outtake doesn't mean that they're trying to dishonor these people who have fought in the wars. I don't think that's what they're trying to do. They're just trying to go for a more realistic outtake. It's obviously never going to be 100% accurate. That's impossible. But at the same time, I do think that this game will help educate people about the true horrors of war. Yes, nothing is ever going to be 100% educational as being there yourself, but I definitely think it will at least somewhat help people understand a bit more. They're never going to truly understand, and I get it. I think he has misinterpreted this as Infinity Ward saying, after people play this campaign, people are truly going to understand the true horrors of war. I don't think that's the case. They are simply going to understand them a little bit better, even if it is only a marginal difference to what they thought before. Every little helps at the end of the day to have more empathy for these people and more more sympathy. I'm sorry, I just don't agree with the argument that he is trying to come across. For example, IGN actually got to see early gameplay and they said that it's too real, it's jarring and unfun, and I get that. This game isn't meant for everyone, it may be going too far for some people. As I was saying, this is meant to be a somewhat educational piece and it's never going to truly portray the true horrors of war, but at least they're trying, and I just think it's a bit unfair for Dr. John to be so critical. Now, I've heard him saying, well, you know, people are just excited for the game being more realistic because they just want to be blowing up stuff and, you know, having a load of fun, and war is not something that is fun and stuff like that. Well, that's actually kind of the point that I think Modern Warfare is trying to go for. Within previous Call of Duty campaigns, the campaigns have made war out to look like a Hollywood movie. It looks like a bunch of fun, when obviously war is not anything like that, and I don't think people want this game to be more realistic because they want that. I don't know, I don't even know if I'm making sense right now, but what I'm trying to say is that people want Modern Warfare to have all of these dark tones, not because of the fact that they want it to be more fun, they want to be more emotionally connected to the story that it is portraying. You know, these tones help you become connected to the characters and stuff like that a lot more, and I'm excited for that. At the end of the day, Infinity Ward are trying to tell a story, one that is made up, one that is not based on reality, so I think they have good intentions. That is all I'm saying. I hope that I made sense within this video. I don't know if I did, I've rambled a little bit, but anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not the latest and greatest Modern Warfare news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.